Just hold still. If you twitch that damned fin again, I swear I'll short the whole matrix. Kale braced his knee against the bulkhead, trying to get leverage. Sweat dripped into his eye, stinging. The Zalosian female, Lyraxen, currently draped over his main diagnostic console like an exasperated monarch on a lumpy throne, merely flicked an iridescent tendril near her shoulder. It shimmered, shifting from azure to violet. "This holding still," she purred, the sound vibrating strangely in the recycled air of his cramped freighter cockpit, "is inefficient. My integument requires flow." She gestured vaguely with a three-fingered hand, talons clicking softly against the console screen. The integument in question was the intricate obsidian and silver bioarmor clinging to her form, currently sparking erratically near the spinal junction, where Kale was attempting delicate repairs with a micro-welder and a prayer. "Yeah, well, my flow requires not getting electrocuted by your fancy space suit," Kale grumbled, wiping sweat from his brow with the back of his grease-stained hand. "How did you even break this thing? It looks tougher than the hull." He nudged a flickering power conduit back into place. A shower of pale gold sparks erupted, making him flinch. Lyraxen hissed, a low, guttural sound, and her entire body went rigid for a second, the armor plates along her limbs flaring slightly. The ambient light in the cockpit dimmed, as if reacting to her displeasure. "It was tested," she said, her voice tight. She shifted again, the movement fluid and predatory despite the confines of the cockpit. Her scaled skin, where it peeked from gaps in the armor near her neck and wrists, rippled with shifting patterns like oil on water, reacting to the residual energy discharge. Against inferior technologies, and pilots, Kale caught the subtle barb. He'd acquired her escape pod after it had screamed past his scavenger ship, the Nomad, looking like a comet trying to outrun hell itself. Bringing her aboard had seemed marginally less suicidal than leaving her drifting. Marginally. Right, inferior pilots broke the galaxy's fanciest onesie. He focused on the delicate wiring, ignoring the way her proximity prickled his senses. She smelled weirdly clean, like ozone and rain and something else he couldn't place, something faintly floral and deeply unsettling. Her species apparently communicated partly through scent and subtle bioluminescent shifts, none of which translated well through his human nose or eyes, leaving him constantly guessing. "Look, Your Highness." "Queen Designate," she corrected smoothly, leaning closer. He could feel the warmth radiating off her, unnervingly different from human body heat. "And you may use my designation, Lyraxen." "Queen Designate Lyraxen," Kale amended, teeth gritted. "Could you possibly radiate a little less queenly condescension while I'm trying not to fry your 5 trillion credit life support system?" Her answering chuckle was low and throaty, sending an involuntary shiver down his spine. He felt the air shift as she moved even closer, her head hovering near his shoulder, inspecting his work. One of the tendrils near her temple brushed against his ear. He jerked back, banging his head on an overhead pipe. "Gah, personal space, ever hear of it?" Lyraxen tilted her head, her large, dark eyes unnervingly direct. They were pupil-less, shimmering like polished obsidian. "Space is relative. Proximity facilitates observation. Your techniques are crude yet effective." Her gaze dropped to his hands, then lingered on the pulse point visible in his wrist. A faint emerald glow began to pulse beneath her scales there. "Your biosignature is agitated. Fear." "Irritation," Kale snapped, turning back to the console, trying to ignore the sudden heat in his face. "Big difference." He slotted the final connection, held his breath, and activated the diagnostic. The sparking stopped. A steady, cool blue light emanated from the spinal junction of the armor. Success. Mostly. The armor seemed to snug itself closer to her form, its surface smoothing out, the ambient light returning to normal. "Ah," Lyraxen breathed, stretching languidly, a movement that strained the seams of his diagnostic console's padding. The armor flowed with her, seamless and perfect now. Functionality restored. "You are more capable than your vessel suggests, human Kale." She slid off the console with unnerving grace, landing silently on the deck plating. She stood tall, nearly eye level with him despite his own height, her presence dominating the small space. The repaired armor gleamed under the ship's lights, making her look even more regal and dangerous. My designation requires compensation for services rendered. Cale folded his arms, leaning back against the bulkhead, trying to project an indifference he definitely didn't feel. Yeah, well, my designation requires not being jettisoned out the nearest airlock by space royalty. Let's call it even for the rescue. She took a step closer, invading his carefully guarded personal bubble again. Her eyes scanned him from head to toe, lingering for a moment on the worn patch on his flight suit knee. The emerald glow under her skin intensified slightly. Even, an inadequate concept. Another step. She was close enough now that he could see the intricate, almost crystalline structure of her scales. Your assistance merits consideration. Her hand lifted, fingers uncurling slowly. He tensed, wondering if she was going to thank him or vaporize him. Her taloned finger reached out, not towards him, but towards the repaired section of her armor on her back. She ran it gently over the smooth join. You have fixed me. Cale swallowed, suddenly finding the recycled air too thick. Just the suit, your queenliness, just the suit. Her gaze snapped back to his, sharp and intense. A slow smile spread across her lips, revealing teeth that were just a little too pointed for comfort. The emerald glow pulsed faster. Perhaps, she murmured, the sound sending illogical sparks down his nerves. But the integration is total. She tilted her head again, that curious, predatory look back in her eyes. Now, what shall I wear? Cale blinked. Where? You're wearing the armor. The thing I just spent 3 hours fixing. He gestured at the gleaming, perfectly functioning biosuit enveloping her. Lyraxen ran a hand down her side, the armor rippling like liquid mercury under her touch. This, she sounded almost dismissive. It functions, yes. Your crude methods were surprisingly effective. She paused, her gaze sweeping over his own utilitarian gray jumpsuit. But it feels wrong now, constricting, hyper-tuned. Her eyes narrowed slightly as if listening to something only she could hear. It resonates strangely with you. He took an involuntary step back. With me, how is that even possible? I just patched the power relay. Zalosian biointegration is complex, she stated simply, as if explaining gravity to a child. Your proximity, your focused bioelectric field during the repairs, it seems to have created an imprint, a sympathetic resonance. She tapped a spot on her breastplate. It expects your signal now. Without it nearby, it feels incomplete, agitated. Cale stared at her, dumbfounded. So, what? You're saying I have to follow you around like some kind of biological key fob for your spacesuit? A low chuckle vibrated from her chest. An amusing, if inaccurate, analogy. She stepped closer again, her movements fluid and deliberate. The faint floral scent intensified. No, it simply means this armor in its current attunement is suboptimal for independent operation. She looked down at herself, then back at him, a thoughtful expression on her alien features. And frankly, rather uncomfortable when you are not adjacent. Uncomfortable, Cale repeated flatly. Right, so what's the plan? I just hover near you indefinitely. Unnecessary. She waved a dismissive hand. Then, with startling speed, she reached out and tugged at the zipper tab on his jumpsuit. He instinctively slapped her hand away, stumbling back another step until his back hit the cool metal of the opposing bulkhead. Hey, what do you think you're doing? Lyraxen cocked her head, regarding his reaction with detached curiosity. The emerald glow beneath her wrist scales pulsed gently. Assessing alternatives, your garments appear loose, unreactive, made of simple woven fibers. She gestured towards his jumpsuit again, ignoring his defensive posture. They lack complex biosignatures. They would not complain. It took Cale's brain a few seconds to process the implication. Wait, you want to wear my clothes? It seems the most logical solution, she said matter-of-factly. This armor is currently irritating. She made a small, dissatisfied sound deep in her throat. Your apparel offers a temporary, neutral alternative until the armor's resonance can be reset, which, she added, her gaze sharp, may require further proximity. He gaped at her. The queen designate of some unknown, probably terrifyingly advanced alien race, wanted to borrow his dirty work jumpsuit because he'd fixed her supersuit too well. The absurdity of the situation almost made him laugh. Almost. The way she was looking at him, sizing him up, still held that undercurrent of predatory assessment. "You're serious." "Zelosians do not engage in frivolous pronouncements," she stated, her tone leaving no room for doubt. She took another deliberate step forward, effectively pinning him against the wall with her presence alone. Her dark eyes seemed to bore right through him. "Your largest outer garment." Now, it wasn't a request. It was a command, delivered with the casual authority of someone used to instant obedience. Cale found himself momentarily paralyzed, caught between disbelief, irritation, and a strange, unwelcome flicker of something else. Something sparked by the sheer audacity, the closeness, the alien intensity radiating from her. This was going to be a long trip. He pushed himself off the wall, trying to regain some semblance of control. All right, fine, but don't blame me if it smells like engine grease in desperation." He turned towards his small locker cubby welded near the engine access hatch. "Just give me a second." He could feel her eyes on his back, an almost physical pressure. He fumbled with the latch, pulling out his cleanest, relatively speaking, spare jumpsuit. It was threadbare at the elbows and stained with something unidentifiable near the knee, but it was whole. He turned, holding it out warily. "Here, knock yourself out, just try not to get any royal ichor on it." Lyraxen took the garment, her long fingers examining the coarse fabric with intense curiosity. She held it up, comparing its size to her own frame. It would be baggy but probably wearable. "Primitive," she murmured, though without malice. "More like a scientist observing a fossil. But sufficient." Then, without any warning or apparent concern for modesty, she reached up to the clasps at her neck. With a series of soft clicks, the bioarmor began to retract, plates sliding over plates, folding inward with astonishing speed and precision. It flowed away from her skin like liquid shadow, coalescing into a compact, multifaceted shape that hovered silently beside her, humming faintly. Cale's breath caught. Underneath the formidable armor, Lyraxen's form was unexpected. Sleek, yes, but also layered with subtle musculature beneath skin that shimmered with its own internal light, currently a soft, pearlescent white laced with faint, pulsing veins of emerald. Delicate fins, almost translucent, ran along her spine and the outer edges of her arms, fluttering slightly in the recycled air. She was undeniably alien, yet possessed a strange, captivating grace. He quickly averted his eyes, focusing on a flickering warning light on a nearby panel, feeling his face heat up again. He hadn't expected that. The armor had seemed like her skin, not something she wore over it. "Your gaze deviation is noted," Lyraxen commented dryly, the sound of fabric rustling filling the silence. "Is nudity taboo in your culture, Cale?" Generally, yeah," he stammered, still staring fixedly at the blinking light. "Especially with unfamiliar royalty, who could probably snap me in half." He heard another low chuckle. "Fear remains a prominent element in your signature." The rustling stopped. "You may observe now, the transition is complete." He risked a glance. She stood there, somehow looking both regal and ridiculous in his oversized gray jumpsuit. The sleeves were rolled up, revealing her slender, scaled forearms and the legs bunched around her ankles. The collar was open, showing the smooth, glowing skin of her throat. The effect was jarring and strangely alluring. The sheer incongruity of the powerful alien queen wearing his grubby work clothes sent a wave of chaotic amusement through him, warring with the underlying tension. She stretched again, testing the unfamiliar fabric. "Adequate," she declared, "though the lack of sensory feedback is disconcerting." She walked towards the cockpit's main view screen, peering out at the star-strewn void. The compact shape of her deactivated armor drifted silently behind her like a metallic pet. "Your vessel is small, Cale, and slow. Where are we bound?" Cale pushed off the wall, trying to reassert some normalcy. "We're bound for keeping a low profile. I scavenge derelicts and avoid entanglements, which," he added pointedly, is getting harder by the minute. He moved towards the pilot's chair, needing the familiar feel of the controls beneath his hands. I was heading towards the Kilo's rift. Less traffic, more potential salvage. Lyraxen turned from the window, her dark eyes studying him again. The emerald glow was still present, a soft, steady pulse under her skin. Kilo's rift, known territory for corsairs, and others. Her gaze sharpened. Those who pursued me may anticipate such a destination. Great, just great. He slumped into the pilot's chair, running a hand through his already messy hair. So, not only do I have an alien queen wearing my jumpsuit because I'm her suit's emotional support human, but we might be heading into a trap set by whoever shot her down. Precisely, Lyraxen confirmed, seemingly unfazed. She approached his chair, placing a hand on the backrest, leaning in slightly. He could feel the warmth radiating from her palm through the thin material of the seat. However, your presence provides an unexpected complication for them. How? He asked warily. Her lips curved into that sharp, unsettling smile again. Because Kale, she murmured, her voice dropping lower, the strange floral scent tickling his nose, my armor now considers you essential personnel. She tapped his shoulder lightly with a taloned finger. The touch sent an unexpected jolt through him, far more potent than simple static, and it is programmed to protect essential personnel vigorously. The next few cycles aboard the Nomad settled into a bizarre routine Kale could never have anticipated. Lyraxen, despite her royal designation, proved surprisingly adaptable, if consistently invasive. She'd claimed his secondary bunk without asking, often lounging there in his borrowed jumpsuit, observing him work with unnerving focus. Her deactivated armor hovered nearby like a silent, ominous guardian. Sometimes she'd approach him while he was recalibrating sensors or running engine diagnostics, her movements swift and silent, making him jump. She'd ask sharp, insightful questions about the ship's systems, her curiosity seemingly genuine but always laced with that undercurrent of assessment. And the touching, always the touching. She'd brush her hand against his arm while reaching for a datapad, her scales cool against his skin. She'd brace herself with a hand on his shoulder when the ship hit minor turbulence, lingering just a second too long. She'd even tried to assist him with nutrient-paced preparation, resulting in a chaotic mess, and him having to physically maneuver her out of the tiny galley, his hands briefly spanning her waist over the loose fabric of his jumpsuit. Each touch, however casual she made it seem, sent confusing signals through his system. His body reacted instinctively, a primal awareness of her presence, while his mind screamed warnings about proximity to powerful, unpredictable aliens, especially aliens who seemed to derive amusement from his flustered state. Your cardiovascular rate increases when I am near, she observed one cycle, watching him wrestle with a stubborn coolant leak. She was perched on a cargo crate, legs crossed elegantly even in the baggy jumpsuit. The emerald glow under her visible skin pulsed faintly. That's because I'm expecting you to suddenly demand my other kidney or declare war on my coffee mug, Kale retorted, tightening a valve with more force than necessary. My dietary requirements are specific. Your organs are likely incompatible, she tilted her head, and your mug poses no strategic threat, a pause, unless it contains substandard stimulant fluids. It's synth-calf, standard grade, and stay away from it. He wiped grime from his cheek, catching her eye. She was smiling faintly, that sharp, intelligent amusement back in her expression. He found himself fighting a reluctant smile in return. Damn it. She was getting under his skin, both literally and figuratively. This Kilo's rift, she said, changing the subject smoothly. Describe its strategic vulnerabilities. It's a navigational nightmare, Kale explained, grateful for the shift. Gravitational anomalies, sensor ghosts, asteroid clusters thick as fleas on a Groxian hound. Easy to get lost in, easy to hide in. Also easy to get smashed into space dust if you don't know the safe channels. And you know these channels. The question was sharp, direct. Enough of them. I've salvaged wrecks in the outer arms before. He hesitated. Look, if your pursuers are waiting there, maybe we should divert. Head for a neutral port, see if we can. No, Lyrexen interrupted, her voice firm. The amusement vanished, replaced by cold resolve. The emerald glow intensified, becoming a distinct, steady light. My path lies through the rift. My objective requires passage. Objective? What objective? You haven't exactly been forthcoming with the details, Your Highness. She slid off the crate, approaching him. The deactivated armor drifted silently behind her. My designation carries burdens, Kale. Information is compartmentalized for security. My pursuers are relentless. They seek not just me, but what I carry. She tapped her temple lightly. Knowledge that could destabilize the quadrant. Great, galactic secrets. Just keeps getting better. He leaned back against the engine housing, crossing his arms. And you think dragging a low-rent scavenger into the middle of your interstellar spy drama is a good idea? Lyrexen stopped barely a foot away. You are no longer merely a scavenger, Kale. Her gaze was intense. You are entangled. Whether by chance or design, our fates are now linked. She reached out, her fingers hovering just above the spot on his chest where his heart hammered against his ribs. He could almost feel the heat radiating from her touch without contact. Your biosignature is now keyed to my primary defense system. My survival is, to a degree, dependent on your proximity. And yours, her eyes flickered towards the hovering armor, may depend on mine. He swallowed hard. So we're stuck together. A simplistic summary, she allowed. I prefer aligned. Her fingers finally brushed against the fabric of his jumpsuit right over his heart. The touch was light, almost hesitant, yet it sent another jolt through him. This time it wasn't just surprise or awareness. It felt different, deeper. The emerald light under her skin pulsed in time with his own accelerated heartbeat. Tell me more of these safe channels, Kale. We will navigate this rift together, and we will emerge. Her confidence was absolute, almost hypnotic. He found himself wanting to believe her, despite every survival instinct screaming at him to run. But where would he run? She was wearing his clothes, keyed to his heartbeat, and trailed by sentient super armor. Running seemed complicated, and suddenly less appealing than facing the unknown with her. Their entry into the Kilo's rift was less a smooth transition and more a chaotic plunge into a cosmic washing machine. Alarms blared as the nomad bucked and shuddered, caught in unexpected gravimetric shear. Kale fought the controls, sweat plastering his hair to his forehead, barking out commands the ship barely seemed able to obey. Asteroids tumbled past the viewport, some close enough to make the hull plating groan in protest. Sensor ghosts flickered across the main screen like malevolent phantoms. Compensating for starboard drift, Kale yelled over the klaxons. Power fluctuations in inertial dampeners. Lyrexen was braced against the back wall, her knuckles white where she gripped a handhold. Even in his baggy jumpsuit, she moved with an innate balance, her body adjusting to the violent shifts. Her eyes, however, were wide, fixed on the swirling chaos outside. The emerald glow under her skin was flickering wildly, shifting between green, gold, and occasionally flashing a startling crimson. He'd learned that crimson usually meant alarm or aggression. Her deactivated armor hovered nearby, its surface subtly rippling, reacting to the external turbulence and, Kale suspected, her own agitation. "Report," she snapped, her voice tight but controlled. "Report is we're getting tossed like dice in a gambler's cup," Kale grunted, wrestling the flight yoke. "One of those anomalies snagged us, trying to break free, but the currents are too strong." Another lurch threw him sideways, his shoulder slamming against the console. Pain shot up his arm. "Navigation options," Lyrexen demanded, pushing off the wall. She moved towards the co-pilot station, her hand hovering over the auxiliary controls. "Limited, everything is fluxing too fast. Path prediction is basically guesswork right now." He risked a glance at her. Her face was set in intense concentration, the playful curiosity gone, replaced by the focus of a warrior. "Unless you have some royal Zalosian trick up your borrowed sleeve." Her eyes met his, a flicker of something unreadable in their dark depths. Perhaps. She reached out not for the controls but towards him. Her hand landed firmly on his shoulder, fingers gripping tight. He flinched instinctively, but her grip wasn't threatening, just solid. Grounding. Focus, Kale. Your vessel responds to you. Feel its stresses. Anticipate the currents. Her touch sent a strange calm radiating through the point of contact, cutting through his panic. It was bizarre, illogical, but undeniable. The frantic edge of his fear smoothed out, replaced by sharp focus. He could feel the ship's groans not just as noise, but as tangible strain. He adjusted the thrusters, a micro-correction he wouldn't have risked seconds before, easing the Nomad slightly out of the worst turbulence. "How did you?" he started. Later, she cut him off. "Incoming object, high velocity, port side." He saw it on the proximity alert, a chunk of rock the size of his ship, tumbling directly towards them. No time to evade. "Brace!" he yelled, instinctively throwing an arm out as if he could shield her. Lyraxen didn't brace. Instead, she moved. With astonishing speed, she shoved past him, slamming her palm onto the main console, directly over the schematic display of her deactivated armor. "Activate! Defensive protocol! Kale!" she commanded, her voice ringing with an authority that vibrated through the deck plating. The compact shape of the armor instantly exploded outward, unfolding with blinding speed. Not onto her, but around him. Plates of shimmering obsidian and silver snapped into place, encasing his pilot's chair, forming a protective cocoon that sealed him off just as the asteroid impacted their port shield. The ship screamed, metal shrieked, and the lights flickered violently, plunging the cockpit into momentary darkness pierced only by the emergency strobes and the cool blue internal light of the armor now surrounding him. He was slammed back into his seat, the impact rattling his teeth, but the armor absorbed the brunt of the shockwave. Through a small transparent section that formed over the main console, he saw Lyraxen thrown against the opposite bulkhead, hitting it hard. She crumpled to the deck, motionless in his oversized jumpsuit. Panic, cold and sharp, lanced through him, overriding the lingering shock of the impact. "Lyraxen!" The armor didn't respond to his shout, didn't retract. It held him fast, cocooned and protected, while she lay injured just feet away. The emergency lights flickered back to a steady, dim red glow. Kale struggled against the encompassing armor pounding on the inside. "Let me out, deactivate, override." Nothing happened. It was locked in defensive mode, prioritizing his safety as commanded. He could see Lyraxen stirring, pushing herself up slowly, one hand pressed to her side. Her face was tight with pain, but her eyes found his through the transparent section of the armor. "Status," she rasped, her voice strained. "Ship's holding barely," Kale reported, his eyes scanning the damage reports flashing erratically on the console. "Port shield generator is offline. Minor hull breaches on Deck 3. We're venting atmosphere slowly." He met her gaze again, his own panic warring with relief that she was conscious. "Are you okay?" She gave a curt nod, wincing as she shifted position. Minor internal bruising. The impact force was significant. She looked at the armor encasing him, then back at him. A faint, ironic smile touched her lips. "It appears my armor is quite dedicated to its new directive." "Yeah, well, tell it to stand down," Kale snapped, rattling the inside of his protective shell again. "I need to assess the damage, reroute power." "Patience, Kale." She pushed herself fully upright, leaning against the bulkhead for support. The emerald glow under her skin was weak, flickering like a dying ember. "The immediate threat has passed. The armor will release you when it senses stabilization." She took a deep breath, wincing again. "It seems my contingency planning was effective." "Effective? You got yourself hurt." He hated the helpless feeling, trapped while she was injured. "Why didn't you just put the damn armor on yourself?" Lyraxen looked away, her gaze distant for a moment. The armor, in its current attunement, it might have hesitated, conflicted loyalty protocols. She looked back at him, her expression strangely vulnerable. Its connection to you is more direct now, uncomplicated. It prioritized the designated asset. She pushed off the wall, taking a tentative step towards him. You, Kale. The simple statement hung in the air, heavy with unspoken implications. He was the asset. Protected at her expense, because he'd fixed her suit, because she was wearing his clothes, because somehow in this mess they were irrevocably tangled together. The armor finally registered the ship's relative stability and began to retract, folding back into its compact form, leaving Kale free but shaken. He immediately unstrapped himself, moving towards her. "Let me see," he said, his voice rough. He reached for her side where she'd been holding herself. She didn't pull away, allowing him to gently probe the area through the thick fabric of the jumpsuit. He couldn't feel any obvious breaks, but the way she flinched told him the bruising was severe. "It will heal," she murmured, her eyes fixed on his face. Her proximity, combined with the adrenaline crash and the undeniable fact she'd prioritized his safety over her own, scrambled his thoughts. The air crackled with more than just damaged systems. "Right, Zelosian super healing, I suppose." He tried for sarcasm, but it fell flat. "Our cellular regeneration is efficient," she confirmed softly. Her hand came up, resting lightly on his chest, mirroring where his hand was on her side. Her touch was cool now, her energy seemingly depleted. The emerald glow was barely visible, but rest accelerates the process. He met her gaze. The earlier tension, the playful antagonism, felt miles away. What remained was something raw, exposed by the near disaster. "Okay," he said quietly. "Okay, let's get you to your bunk, then I'll see how bad the damage is." He started to guide her towards the small corridor leading aft. She leaned on him slightly, her weight surprisingly solid. "Kale," she began, her voice barely a whisper. "Yeah." The armor, its response was faster than anticipated. She paused, as if choosing her words carefully. "The bond, it is strengthening." He didn't know what to say to that. He just tightened his supporting arm around her, feeling the delicate flutter of her spinal fins against his hand through the jumpsuit. They weren't just entangled anymore. They were fused, linked by malfunctioning tech, shared danger, and something else he was increasingly afraid to name. As he helped her limp towards the relative quiet of the crew quarters, the silence stretched, filled only by the groaning protests of the damaged ship and the unsteady rhythm of their breathing. The chaotic flirtation had crashed headlong into stark reality, and the intensity left him reeling. This connection wasn't just proximity anymore. It felt like fate, unwelcome and utterly magnetic. He got Lyraxen settled onto her claimed bunk, the lower one across from his own cramped space. She sank onto the thin mattress with a soft hiss of pain, curling slightly onto her side. The borrowed jumpsuit looked ridiculously large on her now, emphasizing her fragility in a way the sleek armor never had. He fetched the medkit, a basic Terran model, knowing it likely held little that could truly help her alien physiology, but feeling the need to do something. "Standard painkillers probably won't touch whatever's going on inside you," he said, kneeling beside the bunk. "Anything in here look familiar? Antiseptics, tissue welder." She waved a dismissive hand, her eyes closed. "Unnecessary. My internal systems are already initiating repairs." The emerald glow beneath her skin pulsed weakly, a slow, faint rhythm. "Rest is the most effective treatment." "Right, rest." He put the medkit aside, feeling useless. He lingered, unsure whether to leave her alone or stay. The confined space felt charged, intimate in a way that had nothing to do with desire and everything to do with shared vulnerability. He noticed a slight tremor in her hands. Despite her claims of efficient healing, the impact had clearly taken a toll. "Kale," her voice was low, tired. "I'm here." She opened her eyes, locking onto his. "The rift, we are still vulnerable. The ship is damaged." "I know. I'll get stabilization systems back online, patch the leaks as best I can. We lost the main sensor array in that collision, but short range is still functional. We're blind but not deaf." He tried to sound reassuring. "We just need to drift with the currents for a bit, stay quiet." Quiet may not be sufficient. Her gaze sharpened slightly, some of the earlier intensity returning despite her obvious pain. My pursuers, they have ways of tracking xylosion biosignatures, even suppressed ones. Great, so hiding is pointless. Difficult, she corrected. Not pointless, but we need countermeasures. She shifted, wincing again. The armor, it can emit a masking frequency, but it requires significant power, power your damaged vessel may not have. And Kale added grimly, guessing the rest. It probably needs to be close to you to work effectively, right? She gave a slow nod. Its optimal function relies on proximity to my core signature. He sighed, running a hand over his face. Of course it did. Everything came back to proximity. So, let me guess. I need to bring your floating death suit in here. A faint smile touched her lips. It is reassuring in its way. She gestured vaguely towards the foot of the bunk. Place it near. I will attempt to initiate the masking field. He retrieved the compacted armor from the corridor where it had drifted after retracting. It felt strangely dense, humming with latent energy. He carefully placed it on the deck near her bunk. As soon as it settled, the faint emerald glow under Lyraxen's skin seemed to stabilize, pulsing with a slightly stronger, more regular rhythm. The armor itself emitted a low, almost subsonic thrum. "Is it working?" he asked quietly. "Initiating sequence," she murmured, her eyes closed again. "It will take time to establish the full field, requires concentration." She drew a shaky breath. "Kale, stay, please." The last word was almost lost, a soft request utterly at odds with her usual commanding presence. It hit him harder than the asteroid impact. He hesitated for only a second before sinking down onto the edge of his own bunk, directly opposite hers. The narrow space between them felt simultaneously vast and suffocatingly small. He watched her, the faint light catching the pearlescent sheen of her skin where the jumpsuit collar gaped open, the gentle rise and fall of her breathing, the slow, rhythmic pulse of the emerald light beneath. The silence returned, broken only by the ship's creaks and the low hum of the armor. He found himself cataloging the details of her face, the high cheekbones, the slight flare of her nostrils, the way the delicate fins near her temples quivered almost imperceptibly. The alienness was still there, undeniable, but overlaid now with a fragility, a dependence that chipped away at his defenses. He felt a ridiculous urge to reach across the gap to offer comfort, reassurance, protection. It was insane. She was the queen, the warrior, the one with the sentient armor. Yet lying there, injured and relying on his ship, his clothes, his proximity, she seemed breakable. The intense, non-sexual release of the near disaster had stripped away their usual banter, leaving something quieter, deeper, and far more dangerous to his carefully guarded heart. He stayed, watching over her as she concentrated, the rhythmic thrum of the armor a strange lullaby in the wounded silence of the ship. Hours bled together in the dim, humming silence of the crew quarters. Kale dozed fitfully on his bunk, jerking awake at every unfamiliar groan from the damaged hull. Each time his eyes went first to Lyraxen. She seemed to be resting, her breathing slow, and even the emerald glow a steady, soft pulse. The masking field hummed consistently from the armor at the foot of her bunk. He managed to reroute auxiliary power to reinforce the temporary hull patches, and got the short-range scanners showing a slightly clearer picture of the debris field around them. They were drifting, hidden for now, but vulnerable. He ate a cold nutrient bar, the silence amplifying the wrapper's crinkle. He was checking the environmental controls readout on a wall panel when her voice startled him. "Kale." It was stronger now, less strained. He turned. She had pushed herself up, sitting on the edge of her bunk, her bare feet resting on the cool deck plating. The jumpsuit hung loosely on her frame, but the intense pain seemed to have subsided. The emerald glow was brighter, steadier. "Feeling better?" he asked, keeping his voice low. Regeneration cycle nearing completion. She stretched, a fluid movement that hinted at the power usually coiled beneath her calm exterior. Her eyes scanned the small cabin, landing on him. "You have remained." "You asked me to," he said simply, leaning back against the wall panel. "Besides, where would I go? We're still playing hide-and-seek in an asteroid field." She swung her legs fully off the bunk, standing up. She moved without the earlier stiffness, though he suspected she wasn't yet at full strength. She walked the few steps separating their bunks, stopping directly in front of him. The top of her head came just below his eye level. He could smell that strange, clean scent again, ozone and rain and alien florals. Your continued proximity, it accelerated the healing. "My proximity, or the fancy humming space suit," he deflected, uncomfortable with the implication. "Both are factors." Her gaze was unnervingly direct. "The armor resonates with my internal systems. Your biosignature stabilizes that resonance, a symbiotic loop of sorts." She tilted her head, studying his face. "Your presence is calming, even without the armor's influence." His heart gave a stupid little jump. "Probably just relief you didn't die on my ship. Paperwork would be a nightmare." He tried for a smirk, but it felt weak. Lyraxen didn't smile. Instead, she reached out, her cool, scaled fingers tracing the line of his jaw. He froze, his breath catching. Her touch was feather-light, inquisitive. The emerald glow beneath her skin brightened, casting faint green patterns on his face. "You mask your true responses, Kale, but your pulse accelerates. Your pupils dilate. Your skin temperature rises at my touch." Her fingers drifted lower, brushing against the pulse point in his neck. "Fascinating." "Just a residual adrenaline," he managed, his voice huskier than intended. He should pull away. He absolutely should pull away. But he couldn't. Her touch, her nearness, the intensity in her dark eyes, it was paralyzing, magnetic. "Adrenaline does not typically induce this specific bioluminescent reaction," she murmured, tilting her head the other way, observing the soft emerald light reflecting in his eyes. One of her delicate spinal fins fluttered against his arm where it rested by his side. The sensation shot straight through him. "Maybe it does in humans reacting to alien queens, trying to analyze their vital signs by touch," he countered weakly. A low chuckle vibrated from her chest. "Perhaps." Her hand slid from his neck down his chest, pausing over his heart. He could feel the faint pressure through his shirt. This connection, the armor, merely amplified what was already potential. Her gaze held his, deep and searching. "In my culture, Kale, such resonance is not trivial. It signifies compatibility, a potential bonding." His throat went dry. "Bonding like mates." "Among other interpretations," she allowed carefully, "alliance, protection, shared destiny." Her eyes searched his face. "Does the concept frighten you?" "Terrifies me," he admitted honestly, the word ripped from him before he could stop it. "Look, Lyraxen, I'm a scavenger. I fix things, I run, I survive. I don't do shared destiny or bonding with anyone, let alone interstellar royalty on the run." Her expression softened, a subtle shift around her eyes. "Survival often requires adaptation, Kale, and sometimes connection is the most potent form of survival." Her hand on his chest pressed slightly firmer. He could feel the rhythmic pulse of her inner light against his own heartbeat. It felt strangely synchronous. "This resonance it feels," she paused, searching for the word. "Right." The air thickened, charged with unspoken energy. The humming of the armor seemed to fade into the background, replaced by the sound of their breathing, the frantic drumming of his own heart. Her face was so close now, her dark eyes vast pools reflecting the faint cabin light and her own internal glow. He saw the alienness, the scales, the fins, the strange light. But he also saw the intelligence, the vulnerability she tried to hide, the nascent trust she was offering. And beneath the fear, beneath the ingrained instinct to flee complication, something else stirred. A pull, a deep, unexpected yearning for the connection she spoke of. His hand came up, seemingly of its own accord, hovering near her face. He hesitated, then gently brushed a stray lock of hair from her temple, his fingers grazing the cool, smooth scales beneath. She leaned into his touch almost imperceptibly, her eyes fluttering shut for a brief second. The emerald glow surged, washing the small space in soft green light. When she opened her eyes again, the earlier intensity was back, but softened now, layered with something that looked startlingly like desire. His breath hitched. This was escalating far too fast, far beyond banter or accidental proximity. This was intentional. This was dangerous. And God's help him, he didn't want to stop it. The moment stretched, taut and fragile. Kale's fingers lingered against her temple, the cool smoothness of her scales a stark contrast to the heat building inside him. Lyraxen's hand remained pressed against his chest, her thumb stroking absently over the fabric of his shirt, right above his hammering heart. The emerald glow pulsed, a silent conversation passing between them, bypassing language and logic. He saw the question in her eyes, the same one echoing in his own chaotic thoughts. What is this? Where is it going? Lyraxen, he breathed, the name feeling different on his tongue now, weighted with intimacy. Her lips parted slightly. He wasn't sure if she was going to speak or he didn't get to find out. A jarring klaxon suddenly ripped through the charged silence. Red alert lights flashed, bathing the cabin in urgent pulses of crimson. On the wall panel Kale was leaning against, the short-range scanner display lit up with multiple contacts, closing fast. Hostiles? Kale reacted instantly, shoving away from the wall, away from her, the sudden shift back to survival mode jarringly abrupt. He lunged for the main console access in the cockpit doorway. They found us. Masking field must have failed or wasn't strong enough. Lyraxen was already moving towards her armor, her earlier languor replaced by swift, deadly grace. Or they triangulated our position during the collision's energy flare, she countered, her voice sharp, analytical. She placed her palm on the deactivated armor. Activate combat protocol. The armor sprang to life, flowing over her body, encasing her in the familiar obsidian and silver shell in seconds. The transformation was seamless, terrifyingly efficient. She was no longer the vulnerable figure in his borrowed jumpsuit. She was the warrior queen, radiating power. The helmet flowed into place last, obscuring her features, leaving only the glowing visor slits. "How many?" she demanded, her voice slightly metallic through the armor's external speakers. Kale scanned the readouts, his fingers flying across the reactivated console. 3 signatures, small, fast-attack ships, definitely Corsair markings. He cursed under his breath. They're deploying boarding pods. Defenses. Port shield is still offline. Minimal weapons systems functional on this rust bucket. We can't outfight them, and with the rift's interference, we can't outrun them easily. Panic clawed at him again, colder this time. Trapped. Lyraxen turned, her armored form seeming to fill the narrow corridor. Then we deny them their prize. Her visor slits seemed to glow brighter. They want me, Kale, or the knowledge I carry. They likely assume you are merely collateral. Comforting, he muttered, trying to bring the pathetic forward laser cannons online. They sputtered, power conduits whining in protest. Useless. Listen carefully. Lyraxen stepped closer, placing a gauntleted hand on his shoulder. Even through the metal he felt the familiar pressure, the strange sense of connection. They will breach the cargo bay first, standard Corsair tactic. I will intercept them there. You must get to the escape pod. It's small, shielded, it might slip through the chaos unnoticed while they focus on me. What? No, I'm not leaving you. The words were out before he could think, raw and instinctive. The idea of abandoning her after everything felt like a physical blow. Kale, this is not a negotiation. Her voice was harsh, commanding. Your survival is paramount, the armor's directive. Screw the armor's directive, he shot back, turning to face her fully, heedless of the flashing alarms. Screw the resonance and the bonding and whatever else this is. They want you. I'm not running while you fight them alone. Through the visor he felt her intense gaze. There was a beat of silence, filled only by the klaxons and the distant thud of magnetic clamps attaching to the hull, the boarding pods. Your emotional response is illogical, she stated, but the metallic edge to her voice had softened slightly. But noted, she squeezed his shoulder. Fine, new plan, we fight, together. Before he could process the surge of fierce relief, she was already issuing orders. Cargo bay doors seal internal access except for the main junction. Reroute remaining shield power to starboard, focus it tight. Find me anything explosive. Explosive, Lyraxen, what are you planning? Improvisation. She turned towards the cargo bay junction. They expect a cornered dignitary. They will find resistance. She paused at the doorway, looking back at him. Even through the helmet, he could feel the weight of her stare. Stay behind me, Kale, and try not to get killed. Replacing your jumpsuit would be inconvenient. And with that attempt at dark humor, she disappeared through the hatchway towards the sounds of grinding metal as the boarders began cutting through the outer hull. Kale scrambled, grabbing a plasma cutter and an emergency flare pack. The closest things he had to weapons, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. Illogical or not, terrified or not, he wasn't running. He was fighting alongside her. Their fates were linked, all right. Whether that meant survival or a shared fiery end, they'd face it together. The cargo bay was chaos. Sparks showered from the main hull door as the corsairs' cutting lasers sliced through the metal. Lyraxen stood poised near the center of the bay, seemingly calm amidst the screeching alarms and failing lights. Her armor gleamed dully in the emergency strobes, making her look like an avenging phantom. Kale took cover behind a stack of secured crates, plasma cutter clutched tight, flare pack ready. His hands were sweating, his breath coming in ragged gasps. This was insane. He was a scavenger, not a soldier. "They're through," he yelled as a section of the hull door finally gave way, peeling inward with a groan of tortured metal. 3 figures in bulky, scarred vacuum suits immediately stormed in, weapons raised, mag boots clanking on the deck plating. They fanned out, clearly trained professionals, their movements economical and deadly. "Target acquired," one of them barked, his voice distorted by the suit's comms. "Secure the Zolosian, eliminate the human." 2 of them immediately leveled heavy pulse rifles at Lyraxen, while the third swung his weapon towards Kale's hiding spot. Kale didn't hesitate. He ignited the plasma cutter, the intense blue-white flame roaring to life, and triggered the brightest emergency flare simultaneously, aiming it directly at the corsair targeting him. The sudden, blinding glare and the unexpected threat of the cutter made the pirate flinch, his shot going wide, impacting harmlessly against the crates Kale hid behind. That distraction was all Lyraxen needed. She moved like liquid shadow, impossibly fast in the bulky armor. One moment she was standing still, the next she was engaging the 2 pirates focused on her. Her gauntleted fist connected with the first corsair's helmet with enough force to send him stumbling back, visor cracking. She didn't use energy weapons, her armor was the weapon. A blade extended from her other forearm, slicing through the pulse rifle of the second attacker, severing it cleanly. She spun, kicking the disarmed pirate hard in the chest, sending him crashing into the bulkhead. The third corsair, recovered from the flare's glare, fired wildly at Kale, forcing him deeper behind the crates. Plasma bolts sizzled past, melting craters into the metal. Kale risked a glance. Lyraxen was handling the first 2, but this third one had him pinned. He needed to do something, create another diversion. He spotted a pressurized container of coolant nearby, likely damaged in the earlier collision. An idea sparked, reckless and probably stupid. "Lyraxen, coolant line," he shouted, hoping she understood. He fired the plasma cutter at the container's valve stem. Lyraxen, having just disabled the second corsair with a precise nerve strike to the neck joint of his suit, seemed to grasp his intention instantly. As the plasma cutter bit into the valve, she slammed her armored fist onto the deck plating, sending a localized shockwave that momentarily destabilized the remaining corsair's mag boots. Just as he stumbled, Kale's cutter sliced through the valve. Supercooled gas exploded outwards in a thick white cloud, instantly flash-freezing everything in its immediate vicinity and drastically reducing visibility. The corsair yelled in surprise and pain as the cryogenic gas hit his exposed weapon hand. Lyraxen moved through the swirling fog, a dark shape barely visible. Kale heard a solid thud, a grunt, and then silence from the third attacker. The fog began to dissipate slowly, revealing Lyraxen standing over the three downed corsairs. She retracted the blade from her forearm. The cargo bay was suddenly quiet, save for the hiss of escaping coolant and the lingering scream of the alarms. She turned towards him, her glowing visor slits fixing on his position behind the crates. "Report, Kale." He pushed himself up, heart still hammering. "All clear here, you." "Targets neutralized," she confirmed, her voice calm, almost detached. She nudged one of the unconscious corsairs with her armored boot. "Minimal lethal force employed. They will awaken eventually." She walked towards him, her mag boots clicking softly now. She stopped just before him, tilting her helmeted head. "Your improvisation with the coolant was effective and reckless." "Learned from the best," he quipped, his voice still shaky. He gestured with the plasma cutter, suddenly aware of how inadequate it felt. "So, now what? We expecting more company?" "Unlikely. This was likely their primary assault team. Their ships outside will be hesitant to engage further without confirmation of success, especially given the rift's instability." She reached up, and her helmet retracted smoothly, revealing her face. Her expression was intense, her eyes scanning him quickly, checking for injuries. The emerald glow under her skin was bright, vibrant. "You are unharmed." "Just overloaded on adrenaline," he admitted, lowering the cutter. "You." "The armor sustained minor scoring. My physiology is unimpeded." She took a step closer, her gaze softening almost imperceptibly. "You fought, Kale. You did not run." "Told you I wouldn't," he said, meeting her eyes. The charged energy from before rushed back, intensified by the shared danger, the visceral fight for survival. The fact that they were standing here, alive, surrounded by neutralized enemies, felt like a victory hard-won together. "Your loyalty is unexpected," she murmured, reaching out. Her gauntleted hand hesitated, then gently touched his cheek. Even through the metal, the gesture felt intimate and valued. He leaned into the touch instinctively, covering her gauntlet with his own hand. The contrast between the cold metal and the warmth of her implied presence beneath it sent a shiver down his spine. "We're in this together, right? Aligned." A small smile touched her lips, real this time, lighting up her face. "Aligned," she confirmed, her voice barely a whisper. The alarms continued to blare, the ship was still damaged, and they were stranded in hostile territory, but in that moment none of it mattered as much as the connection reforged in the heat of battle. The armor, the resonance, the borrowed jumpsuit, it had all led to this. Not just proximity, not just dependence, but a choice. A bond tested and proven. He looked into her deep, alien eyes and knew, with terrifying certainty, that running was no longer an option he'd ever consider again. With the immediate threat neutralized, a fragile sense of security settled over the nomad. Kale managed to silence the most grating alarms, leaving only the low thrum of emergency power and the hiss of the makeshift coolant patch. Lyraxen, still clad in her armor minus the helmet, helped him secure the unconscious corsairs in a storage locker. Working together felt natural now. Less forced proximity, more practiced partnership. They moved around each other in the confined spaces, with an easy familiarity that hadn't existed before the fight. "We need to get moving," Kale said, studying the navigation console. "Staying here is asking for trouble. Even if their ships outside are spooked, they won't wait forever." "Agreed." Lyraxen stood beside him, looking over his shoulder at the swirling star chart of the rift. "Can your vessel maintain propulsion?" "Barely. Main drive is functional but unstable. We'll have to stick to low-energy trajectories, ride the currents where we can. It'll be slow going." He plotted a potential course, a winding path through a slightly less dense asteroid cluster. Best chance is to aim for the Serpent's Coil Nebula on the far side of the rift. Pirate traffic avoids it, too many sensor anomalies, stories of ghost ships, might give us the cover we need. "The coil," Lyraxen murmured, her expression thoughtful. "Yes, that could work. Its unique energy signatures might interfere with long-range tracking." She looked at him. "Plot the course, Kale. I will monitor the armor systems and our power reserves." As he worked, focused on the delicate calculations needed to navigate the treacherous rift currents. He felt her presence beside him, a steady warmth. The earlier intensity hadn't vanished, but it had settled, deepening into something less volatile, more resonant. He was intensely aware of her, of the way the light caught the iridescent scales at her temple, the slight furrow of concentration on her brow as she interfaced mentally with her armor's diagnostics. He found himself wanting to reach out to touch her arm, to offer a reassurance he didn't entirely feel himself. He resisted, channeling the urge into his work. Finally, he had a viable, if risky, course plotted. Okay, ready as we'll ever be. He engaged the main drive, feeling the familiar shudder as the engines reluctantly came online. The Nomad began to move, slowly, carefully, picking its way through the debris field. Lyraxen turned from her monitoring. Power levels are stable for now. The masking field is holding, though drawing significant energy. She stepped away from the console, moving towards the center of the small cockpit. She reached up, activating the retraction sequence for her armor. It flowed off her body, coalescing back into its compact, hovering form. She stood there once more in his oversized gray jumpsuit, the familiar sight somehow both comforting and stirring. She stretched, the movement less guarded now, more fluidly natural. "This garment," she said, tugging lightly at the sleeve, "is surprisingly comfortable after combat." Cale chuckled, the sound rough in the quiet cockpit. "Glad my work clothes meet with royal approval." She walked towards him, stopping beside the pilot's chair. She didn't crowd him this time, just stood near, her presence a quiet counterpoint to the hum of the ship. "Cale," she began, her voice soft, losing the commanding edge. "What happened in the cargo bay?" "We survived," he finished for her, keeping his eyes on the navigation display, though he saw her reflection in the viewport glass. "More than that," she paused. "Your actions, they were not logical for self-preservation." "Maybe I'm not always logical," he admitted, finally turning to look at her. Her dark eyes held a mixture of curiosity and something deeper, warmer. Maybe some things are more important than just surviving alone." Her lips curved into a soft smile. "A sentiment my people understand well. Connection, it strengthens the whole." She reached out, her bare, scaled hand hovering just above his where it rested on the throttle control. He didn't pull away. He simply turned his hand palm up, an invitation. Her cool fingers slid into his, lacing together. The contact was electric, but different from before, less shock, more steady current. The emerald glow under her skin pulsed gently, in sync with his own steadying heartbeat. "So," he said quietly, his thumb stroking the back of her hand, feeling the smooth texture of her scales. "Queen designate Lyraxen, what happens when we get out of this rift, assuming we do?" Her gaze held his, serious now. "My path is dangerous, my enemies are powerful. Reaching my objective, it will require alliances, trust." Her grip tightened slightly on his hand. "And you, Cale, what path will you choose?" He looked at their joined hands, then back into her eyes. The guarded walls he'd spent years building felt like they were crumbling, eroded by her persistence, her vulnerability, her strength. The idea of going back to his solitary life, scavenging ruins alone, felt empty now, hollow. "Guess my path just got realigned," he admitted, a wry smile touching his lips. "Looks like I'm sticking with you, Your Highness, for better or worse." Lyraxen's answering smile was radiant, transforming her alien features into something breathtakingly beautiful. The emerald glow surged, filling the cockpit with soft, warm light. "Better, Cale," she murmured, leaning closer, her forehead resting gently against his temple. "I believe it will be better, together." He closed his eyes, breathing in her unique scent, feeling the steady pulse of her life against his, the hum of the ship carrying them slowly, tentatively, towards an unknown future. The fear was still there, a low thrum beneath the surface, but now it was overshadowed by something else, something bright and fierce and full of possibility. Hope. The journey through the serpent's coil was tense but blessedly uneventful. The nebula lived up to its reputation, sensor ghosts dancing on the screens, strange energy readings baffling the Nomad's already struggling systems. but the interference worked both ways, providing excellent cover. Kale piloted with focused intensity, Lyraxen often beside him, offering surprisingly insightful navigational suggestions based on energy flow patterns her Zalosian senses could perceive more clearly than his instruments. They worked in comfortable silence mostly, punctuated by shared nutrient bars and quiet observations about the swirling cosmic clouds outside the viewport. The intimacy forged in crisis settled into a quieter, deeper rhythm. She still wore his jumpsuit, having made no move to reactivate her armor for anything other than system checks. It had become normal, a symbol perhaps of their strange, evolving dynamic. One cycle, as they drifted through a particularly dense patch of glowing turquoise gas, Lyraxen was examining a stellar cartography shard Kale had salvaged long ago. She traced the intricate alien glyphs etched onto its crystalline surface with a thoughtful finger. This script, it is ancient Cathar, pre-expansion era. Kale glanced over from the helm. Yeah, is it important? The Cathar were master navigators, she murmured, her eyes distant. They charted pathways through folded space, realities adjacent to our own. Most believed their knowledge lost. She looked up at him, her gaze sharp. Where did you find this, Kale? Derelict cruiser graveyard near the Tartarus anomaly. Picked it clean years ago. That shard was just interesting looking. Never could get a translator to make sense of it. Lyraxen held the shard up, angling it towards the nebula's light. Faint internal circuits within the crystal seemed to glow in response. Perhaps it required a different kind of translation. She closed her eyes, concentrating. The emerald light under her skin pulsed, flowing down her arm towards the shard. The glyphs on its surface began to glow with their own soft, blue light, shifting and rearranging. Kale watched, fascinated. After a long moment, she opened her eyes, looking slightly drained but exhilarated. It maps hidden conduits, she breathed. Safe passages undetectable by conventional sensors, not just through this nebula but beyond, far beyond. She looked at him, her eyes wide with implication. Kale, this isn't just a map, it's a key. A way out of the systems controlled by my enemies, a path to freedom. Freedom. The word resonated deeply with Kale. It was what he'd always chased in his own solitary way. Now it seemed they might have found a path towards it together. Can you use it? Navigate by it? I believe so. The Cathar resonance patterns, they feel familiar, akin to some of our own deep space navigation techniques. She carefully placed the shard on the console. It will require concentration, and integration with your ship systems might be complex. We've handled complex before, Kale said, a grin spreading across his face. He reached out, resting his hand on her shoulder. We'll figure it out. She leaned into his touch, her own hand covering his. Yes, we will. As the nomad finally cleared the outer tendrils of the serpent's coil, emerging back into relatively normal space, a profound sense of relief washed over Kale. They made it. Against the odds, they'd survived the rift, evaded pursuit, and found a potential path forward. He looked over at Lyraxen, who was asleep in the co-pilot chair, her head resting against the headrest, her face relaxed in slumber. The emerald glow was soft, peaceful. His jumpsuit looked rumpled and worn, but on her it seemed right. He felt a surge of possessiveness, quickly followed by a wave of tenderness that startled him with its intensity. He reached out, gently brushing a stray tendril of her fin away from her cheek. She stirred slightly, murmuring something in her own language, but didn't wake. He let his hand linger for a moment, tracing the delicate line of her jaw, the strange, captivating beauty of her alien features now achingly familiar. He wasn't just her protector, her pilot, the human her armor was keyed to. He was falling for her. The realization hit him not with fear, but with a quiet certainty. He turned back to the helm, gazing out at the starfield ahead. The future was still uncertain, filled with danger and the enemies Lyraxen carried with her. But now they had a map, a fragile ship, and each other. It wasn't much, but it felt like everything. He checked their course, aligning it with the first waypoint Lyraxen had deciphered from the Cathar shard. a hidden conduit leading towards the galactic rim, towards uncharted space, towards freedom. He settled back into his chair, feeling Lyraxon's quiet presence beside him, the steady hum of the ship beneath him. A new beginning. Their beginning. He smiled, a genuine, unguarded smile. Whatever came next, they'd face it together, aligned.